Hi, my name is Vanèe Smith-Matsalia. I am representative for Transform PD, and I am going to be sharing today with you about the abolitionist journey and a little bit of a work and some research that myself and my partner, Miss Jacquay Durant, have been working on and building on, and that we present at many professional developments. So I'd love for you to join me in Nearpod. So if you can go to joinnearpod.com or go to the app and put in the code that you see on the screen, Z is in zebra, 4, H like hello, V like victory, L like love. So again, that code is Z like zebra, 4, H like hello, V like victory, L like love, Z4HVL. So if you could please go ahead and put that into Nearpod. I will give you a little bit of wait time to go to nearpod.com and join my session. Thank you so much for your patience and thank you so much for getting on task and getting that done. I greatly appreciate that. If you need to pause the video to give yourself more time, by all means, please pause the video. You will be prompted to pause the video several times throughout this session because I'm going to be asking you to interact with the Nearpod. So Nearpod is an interactive teaching tool for anyone who has not used it before. And so you're going to be asked to pause and interact with it several times throughout the presentation. That's going to take up a bit of our 45 minutes is part of the expectation of pausing and doing the work. Because again, that's how abolition works. You do have to pause, consider, reflect, and then do the work. So that's how we're going to be getting into this today. All right, we're going to jump right into the presentation. Sorry. All right. Thank you for joining us at the Educator Collaborative Gathering. I'm so excited to be here. Again, my name is Vanèe, and I'm going to be walking you through some of my work and research on the abolitionist journey, the Underground Railroad of educational justice. So I want you to really take some time if you want to take notes. I want you to interact with this presentation. I know this is a recorded session, but that does not mean that we cannot still interact together. And I'll give you a couple of ways in which we can do that. First, this is who we are. My partner, who is not here with me today, unfortunately, could not be here to do this session with me, is Miss Jacquay Durant, phenomenal educator. She's been taught English in San Bernardino. She's been in San Bernardino, I believe, 14 years now. She's a program specialist, a curriculum designer of just the highest par. She is in the high school newly elected to the high school steering committee for NCTE, the National Council Teachers of English. She's an educational consultant with Transformational PD, and an all around wonderful person to work with. So that is Jacquay. And if you want during this time, if you have questions or thoughts or ideas or reflections that you're thinking while you're watching the session, by all means, if you want to tweet at Miss_Durant, she will definitely hop in and respond when she sees your tweet, and we want to engage in discussion with you. I, again, am Ms. Vanèe Smith-Matsalia. I have been teaching English for 11 years here in the wonderful city of San Bernardino. I'm a demonstration teacher for this city. I teach middle grades. I'm an eighth grade teacher. And I am newly elected to the middle grade steering committee for NCTE. Very excited about that. I'm an ASCD emerging leader class of 21-22. Recently elected to the board of Southern California Teachers of English just about a month or two ago. Very excited. And I do educational consulting again through Transformational PD. You can find us if you want to email us about anything you hear, you learn. Ideas, feedback, you can find us on Transform PD. And if you want to talk about this, you want to live tweet your learning while you're watching this video at any time. This will be a slow tweet, so anyone can jump into this conversation. You want to put in Ed Collab Gathering and hashtag Abolitionist Journey. So those are the two hashtags we're going to be checking in and following to see how this discussion is going. If anyone wants to jump in and tweet along as they're learning, so we can kind of talk together and still interact together, even though we're not all together. I know sometimes doing distance learning learning doing virtual, it feels so isolated and so far apart. I know that from 2 years of doing distance learning, and I know that you do too. So this is a way for us to connect. And maybe you jump in and see somebody else has already commented, and so you have another classmate that you can interact with, or you jump in and you reach out to me at Token Black Teach, and then I respond to you, and we're able to discuss, and we can talk, and we can take this conversation and this growing and this learning and this processing as long and as much and as deep as we like, guys. So please, by all means, holler at us right there on Twitter. Reach out, we'll holler back. We're not gonna ignore you. We're not Twitter superstars or anything. So we'll definitely see you, and we'll definitely speak back to you. So thank you so much for taking time, getting those hashtags down. If you need to pause for a moment, if you want to write them down or scroll over and put our Twitter handles down, I'll give you a minute to pause. You can pause the video now, and then when you're ready, push play. I'm assuming now that you've unpaused your video or you didn't pause at all. Either way, I'm ready to go. So let's go ahead and move forward and get into some of our work. All right, so the journey. When we talk about the abolitionist journey, it's important to understand that everybody is on a journey somewhere to something. Our life is a journey. As educators, we have a very unique opportunity. We're not only on our own journey, but we get to play a significant journey in the roles of our students. Everyone gets to play a journey in the role of someone else. That's all we are people who are on journeys interacting with other people's journeys. But as teachers, we are interacting as educators, not just teachers, educators across the spectrum. We are educating so many people. We are leading and guiding so many people. We have the ability to come across thousands of journeys in our careers, and we have a chance to leave a footprint on someone else's journey. And all that's really left for us to decide is, where are we going in our journey, and what role are we going to play on that journey? And while we're deciding that, we also have to decide, how are we actively choosing to impact the journeys of the ways around us? When I look at teaching, I don't see myself as the leader or the boss. I see myself as a guide to others who are on their journey. I'm only here to use my experience to point them in directions based on my knowledge and experience. That's what my role is. So, how am I affecting the journeys of all of my learners and my colleagues and the people who work with me in all the different ways that they work with me? How are we interacting with one another and intersecting with one another's journeys? So, Jacquay and I have spent so much time doing professional development on anti racism and abolition, and we have done all the books and the reading and the trainings, and we have done all of those things, and we are super vocal, and we do a lot of work in that space. And we started noticing some patterns here. And we were looking at all the different names of the people whose work we love and we respect. Looking at Bell Hooks, looking at Dr. Bettina Love, looking at Miss Aluo, looking at Ijeoma Aluo, looking at so many people. One of my favorites right here. I have the book right in front of me. This book is Anti-Racist, and this one by Tiffany Jewell. We're looking at so many people, not light, but fire by Matthew R.K. Man, there are so many. I don't want to start naming names because I will forget so many people. Goldie Muhammad, so many people, so many works, so much study, and not just the most recent people. And looking at decades and decades work on education, educational reform, educational abolition, and we started noticing some patterns and some roles. And so we started kind of finding a way to categorize those roles and those patterns. And we kind of broke these up into two general categories. When we're looking at abolitionist journey continuum, because this is a continuum, you can be on any place at any time. It's not like an arrival. It's a journey that's consistent. There are people who work as agents who are working towards and for abolition in education. And then there are people who are adversarial to abolition. And we've kind of identified about 7 steps. I'm not saying, and we are not saying that this is the end all be all. There is no end all be all. There is no all holy place of knowledge. This is just the way we've kind of broke it up for our understanding. And here are the roles that we've kind of designated here. When we look at the adversary, we have the antagonist, we have the absent, and we have the academic. Those are the three categories that we've kind of identified for those who are adversarial to work of educational freedom, especially and particularly for Black and Brown children. I want to make sure I clarify. When we started doing this work, we were framing our work around educational freedom for Black children specifically, Black and Brown children in general. Um, so when we were looking at these things, we'd identify antagonist, absent, and academic as three of the biggest ways to be adversarial to the work of abolitionists. Don't worry, I'm going to explain the terms. And then we've got the four terms of people who are working within um, agency, being an agent of change, a change agent for children of color specifically. But again, this is educational injustice in general. So we've realized it can be applied a lot broader than what our initial thinking. But we're looking at that the roles for an agent were ally, an advocate, an accomplice, and an abolitionist. And I don't want anyone to think, oh, I am on this step. No one is on one particular step all the time at any time. That's impossible. We're all on multiple journeys, and we all have several different people who need agents, people who we could be adversaries for. So we can be on more than one step at the same time, depending on the context. But this is some way that we kind of looked at this journey, and we created kind of our railroad, because our guiding saint is my personal hero, as well as Jacquet's personal hero. Our guiding saint would be, of course, Miss. Sorry, I am getting hoarse exactly when I'm trying to record, so I know I sound really scratchy. So I apologize for my voice sounding scratchy while I'm trying to record. But Miss Armenta, the queen of the Underground Railroad that we all know about, and so we are going to kind of use her as our patron saint and our guide, and we're going to when we did our work. And so that's why we had the idea of the railroad type framing of the image that you see in front of you. So the abolitionist journey, this continuum, is continuous and it's fluid. There is no arriving. You cannot just be an abolitionist at all times. You cannot be an ally at all times to all people and all things. There are multiple places on this journey. There are multiple ways of being in this journey. And I think sometimes we use this term, people throw around the term, I'm an educational abolitionist, I'm an accomplice. We throw around those terms so easily without ever really, I think, taking into account what we are saying, because these words have meaning. And abolitionist means something historically. It has a real concrete definition, and everyone wants to put abolitionist in their Twitter bio, and everyone wants to put, I'm a accomplice, or all these other things in their Insta and on their TikTok and all those things. But I don't know if, I hate to sound like a meme, I don't know if those words always mean what we think they mean. And so we wanted to kind of make sure that we all understand that these terms are based on context, and you can be in multiple places and multiple times. Um, all depending on the context. And so I want to talk about them a little bit, and maybe we wanted to try and come to an understanding of what these terms meant and what that looked like in the work of educational justice. What does it actually mean? Now, I'm not going to define that this is one way of being, the only way of being, any of those things. And we will never, ever do that. This is a reflection of what some of that looks like, what it definitely is not. It is never going to be a check off list. Check these 5 things to be an abolitionist. That's not how this works. That's not how the work of educational justice and freedom work. That's not how revolution works. If there was a checkbox for revolution, which is what we do, educational revolution, then it's not revolutionary. There is no undefined way. Dreams, freedom cannot be confined to a checklist. It cannot be confined to a teaching strategy. It cannot be defined into a mission or vision statement. That those ways of trying to box in thinking are tools of white supremacy that we are not going to acknowledge or work within. So I don't want you to get the understanding going in here that I'm going to give you some definitions and some check boxes and some strategies and steps of how to be an abolitionist, because that's not how that works. That's not how any of this works. What we're going to do is reflect on and honor the work that has been done, looking at the work of the ancestors and those before us, and kind of coming to an understanding of what these terms mean historically and presently in ways in which we can be engaging with them. All right, well, let's start with adversary because, it's the beginning. These are those who are actively working against educational justice. And I use the term adversary on purpose because to be an adversarial to someone, you don't even always have to do it with intention. And I want to talk a lot about intentionality with being an adversary, and kind of be really real. And some of this may not sit right with us right away. It might make us a little uncomfortable, but I want us to start really thinking right now about ways that we can sit in that discomfort and be comfortable with our discomfort and start to work through those feelings together. So here are my adversary, and I kept the list very very minimal on purpose because again I don't want us to get caught up on definitions and check boxes. I want us to start thinking. I want us to think about the ideals and principles, not the check boxes. There is not a checkbox list to be an adversary. These are just ways of thinking about them. First, we've got the antagonist, English teacher. Did my bachelor's and master's programs in English and literature. So I'm all about knowing the character types in the story. The antagonist is a person who is who is working against the person or object or thing, working against the main character, the protagonist. Antagonists in educational justice work, these are the ones who are actively working against freedom work. They're actively working to stop abolition. They're working against student autonomy and joy. We see examples of that right now with the book banning, with the find doxing teachers, the attacks on social media, the attacks happening in our local governments against teachers, calling everything CRT and not knowing what that term means or how to use it. Actively fighting against our kids having access to joy in their classroom libraries, actively fighting against our students having choice in what they want to read and experience in their classroom. Things that we know as educators are prohibitive and absolutely opposed to everything we know that works in education. And till we see antagonists, they tend to be loud. They're the ones who fight actively to disrupt your work. They're not hiding. They're the ones who are in front of you. They're the ones who are protesting. They're the ones who are in the meeting who speak out and say that this isn't necessary. And those kids don't. Those kids don't want to learn. And that community doesn't value education. And we have better things to be doing. The antagonist is often loud, and it's hard to miss them. And oftentimes we think that the antagonist is the big bad of the adversary, but they're not. The card can be rather insidious, though, because they work well to hide the other two, the absent and the academic, which are the ones that do the most damage. Because we're all focusing on the antagonist, and then the absent and the academic are doing the most damage. The absent is refusing to gauge in freedom of abolition. This is the I don't see race. I don't see color. I just treat all my kids the same. I treat all my employees the same. Slavery was a long time ago. The Latino rights movement, Chicano rights movement was a long time ago. Everyone has equal rights now. And if they just would have followed the rules and come across the border legally, then they wouldn't have been in the cages. And that is what that is. The ones who just refuse to engage. If it's not broke, everything's okay here. It's that toxic positivity end, which is massively dangerous and damaging to children of color and marginalized communities. The absent just pretend as if there is no problem. And those are the things they say if they take the time to say anything at all. I'm just teaching the standards. I'm just going to focus on my standards. I'm just going to focus on my job. I've got referrals to process. I'm going to work on that. I've got to deal with my parents. I got to deal with these problem students. I don't. There's no time in my space. I have no space for that. Absent are so dangerous because they are so loudly sending a message to those who are working and fighting and those who are being underserved or not served, that you are not a priority and I do not care about you. I'm too busy with the other things that fit what I want to be concerned about you at all. The absent are so, so dangerous. Then you've got the academic. These are kind of hard to pinpoint. They feel like they should be on the other side of the continuum. They feel like they should be an agent. They probably think they are an agent. These are the ones who collect all the essential knowledge. They've read every book, they've gone to every conference, they're familiar with all the language, constantly engaged in collecting more knowledge, but they have absolutely no record of change. The primary role of the academic is to absolve themselves of personal guilt around their role in oppression. They do it because they want to absolve themselves. And I've seen this range anywhere between just and watching educational justice work and freedom work like it's a spectacle, like it's a cool hashtag and a thing to do, all the way up to the almost masochism or please, person of color, tell me how evil I am, whip me some more. And they almost enjoy the process of hearing about white supremacy or patriarchy and sitting through the guilt of those sessions and those learnings in that book gives them some sort of pleasure, and it derives something in people that makes them feel like I've accomplished something. And it's all very self serving and it's dangerous because it creates the idea that work is being done, which is dangerous when work is not being done. And in fact, we're holding up the real work by putting up this picture of look how much we're doing. We did this book study. Have we made any change? No. But look, we did this book study. We've checked our box. Abolition work is being done here. Anti-racist work is being done here. We all read Kendi. I want you to read Kendi. That's a great thing to do. But that's not the work of abolition. That's reading a book. It's different. Doing work and reading about work are not the same thing. And academics can be very dangerous because they also have the power to leverage themselves in a position above the voices of those who are actually working. And by using the terminology and understanding this, knowing who all the big names and speakers are, they find a way oftentimes to center themselves in the space and how much I've done and how much I know and how much I've read and how many conferences I've gone to, that the actual work is left undone and they are still serving the systems of oppression without even always realizing what they're doing. And so that's why I say academics are particularly dangerous when we're looking at the adversaries. Now is going to be a time where I'm going to ask you to pause from time to time. So if you got into my Nearpod and the Nearpod code, let me see if I can put that back up for you if you missed it. The Nearpod code was, sorry guys, my internet is so slow here. Well, you can always rewind back to the beginning to get the Nearpod code. Oh no, I shouldn't have done that, should I? Hopefully it'll come back to me. Sorry, I had to pause for a moment there, but that's okay because I want you to pause. I want you to answer these questions. I'm going to go through them and you're going to pause on each one. I want you to pause me after I read the question and then type your response in here. When you are watching, hearing, or reading about the adversary section of the Abolitionist Continue, what do you notice and when do you wonder? I'm just asking for a notice and wonder. If you don't remember what it says, you can click right there and it'll open the slide up for you. Now's the time to push pause and respond. Thanks for unpausing now that you're done writing. If you didn't pause me yet, you're probably feeling silly right now. Push pause. Everyone else, thanks for pausing, for responding. Thank you so much for giving some feedback there. And just for those who don't know, you can speak. If you're not able to type, you can video record, you can put in an image. It doesn't have to be typing. So, when we thought about the adversary, I want you to now think about how do you think the adversary section of the journey plays out in instruction and what does that look like? And I want you to respond to that here. What do you think it looks like in classroom instruction and in classroom practices? Push pause and respond. All right, I'm hoping you unpause me just now. I'm going to move on to our next share out. So, the adversary section, how do you think it plays out in educational leadership? I want you to take a minute and respond. I want you to think about site leadership, district leadership, state, local leadership, or whatever leadership areas in which you find yourself or you find yourself interacting with. How do you think the adversary section of the journey plays out in those spaces? Please pause me, take a few minutes, probably about 5 minutes, and respond. I'm hoping you're back from pausing and unpausing, so we're moving on. All right, and now I want you to think about within the community. And you're going to respond. This is our last response for this section. How do you think the adversary section plays out in local community, daily interactions, social media, or any other way that you can think of? Remember, those headings again are the antagonist, the absent, and the academic. Go ahead and push pause, take a few minutes, and respond here. And a welcome back. All right, now we're going to get into the agent. Active engagement towards educational justice. And this is where I want every single one of us to eventually be, is somewhere within the role of being an agent. So we've kind of identified 4 general areas, and these terms are not new. We didn't make these terms up. None of these terms are something we invented. We're just trying to kind of classify them. And they're not in particular order. This is just the way that we wrote them out. So we have the ally listed first. This is someone who cooperates in freedom work, but generally an ally does it for mutual benefit, if it's nothing else but self-assurance, feeling better. For this is someone who is providing personalized moral support. You're doing something specifically to help those within your influence, being the ear to listen to a colleague who's working in educational justice, providing that thing that's applied to one of your students that they need to be a window or a mirror in their own space. This is personal work. This is within a smaller aspect. This is someone who is helping individually. Working on something is not systemic necessarily, but it is more personal, and there's always the mutual benefit happening there. An ally works for mutual benefit. They are helping someone who's in an oppressed situation. But an ally, generally, there's an exchange happening there. Not always, but generally. Next, we have the advocate. The advocate is public and vocal. It's not always personal. It's not a one-to-one interaction. It's not secretive. An advocate is public and vocal in their support for education, justice, and freedom work and initiatives. This person is lending their own voice and privilege to create space for freedom and joy for others. They're lending their voice to other people's causes. There's not a benefit in it for them. They're actively and publicly interrogating systems that perpetuate harm for students and learners. That's what an advocate does. That's what advocacy means. It means speaking up for others. And that is the next step there. Next, after we have advocacy, we've got an accomplice. This is someone who is knowingly and voluntarily and intentionally giving assistance to others and fighting and dismantling systems that perpetuate harm. This is someone who is using their privilege as a shield to those more vulnerable who are engaging in freedom work. When we're looking at an accomplice, I want you to think about people who stand in the way and protect marginalized people using their own privilege. An accomplice puts themselves in the line of harm in order to create safe places and creating harbors of safety for those who are more vulnerable to systems of oppression. An accomplice is not only vocal like an advocate, but they are actively engaged in doing work. They are not just speaking, they are doing, and they're working in a sphere of protection. They're not speaking up for other people. They're insisting that those other people be heard, and they're standing in the way so that those other people can be heard and stopping using their privilege and their space and their power, because we all have privilege, space, and power. This is not dedicated to any one type of people group. We all have those things in our own spaces, but you're using your privilege, space, and power to ensure other people are heard, those who are being oppressed, those who are more vulnerable. And again, our work is specifically around Black kids and brown kids, so that's generally what we're talking about. But again, this can be applied to a much wider realm window. And then an abolitionist. This is someone who personally and publicly is acting to dismantle the systems. I'm thinking at the board meetings. I'm thinking insisting on policy change in the system. Not only insisting upon helping write it, doing the research, helping to write the research, gathering the data, showing up and speaking up, and doing more than just speaking up, but insisting upon the ones who are on the front lines protesting the things that are causing harm, the ones who are not just creating safe spaces, but going around and within and between the harmful systems to pull the most damaged children and learners out of it and create places of safety and love for them, it at risk of personal detriment. If there is no risk of personal detriment, you're probably not doing abolitionist work. When we're thinking about abolition and slavery, all of those people did work at risk of themselves. Putting oneself in the position of harm to create safe passages and home places for those more vulnerable. That is the work of an abolitionist. When you people were being smuggled out of slavery, the smugglers were in just as much danger. The families who are creating safe harbor, hiding enslaved people in their barns and their houses and their yards and all the places that they created in the churches, those people were putting themselves at harm's risk. Those are the abolitionists. They're also the ones who are showing up arguing policy, even though they was not popular at the time. They're the ones writing letters to those who are in charge. They're the ones running for office and pushing for change, creating change themselves. Abolition was not just people smuggling those out of slavery. It was those pulling the system apart that allowed it to happen in the first place. That's what abolition looks like. Now I want you to reflect for yourself. What do these four things look like in curriculum? What do they look like in instruction? What do they look like in positions of leadership, site, national, district leadership? What do they look like in the community, in social media? What does it look like to be an ally, an advocate, an accomplice, an abolitionist in your classroom space? How does that work? And now it's time for you. And I want us to stop together and I want us to take about maybe 10 minutes and grab a pen, because I don't want this to be shared, because I really want you to really think about this for yourself. Just kind of jot down on a sheet of paper, what do you think that work looks like and why? I'm not going to define that for you. I can't define that for you. But I want you to start thinking about that and try and figure out, where on this journey am I in any sphere? Where do I want to be? What can I be doing to advocate? How can I be more of an ally? Who needs my allyship? Have I been sitting comfortably in allyship when I have the means and ability to be an accomplice? And if I have, start interrogating. I want us to start considering our whys. Why do so few people move into 3 and 4, being an accomplice and an abolitionist? Why does that so often land on people of color, specifically women of color? What are we going to do about it? These are not questions that we can answer in one day. These are not questions that we can answer for you, but they're ideas that we want you to think about, Jacquay and I. We want you to start to process them. Finally, reach out. If you have any further questions, thoughts, you just want to share constructive feedback with us, please reach out to us. You can find us at transformpd.com. You can email us at info@tpdconsults.com. We are both on Twitter. I am at Token Black Teach. Jacquay is at Miss_Durant. And we would love to hear from you. We would love to interact with you. We would love to hear your thoughts on if you think this was really any good or if you think it was complete nonsense, and we'd love to know why. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for spending some time processing and thinking with us. And I want you to make sure you pause and you do reflect on that last slide. Really pause here. And if you haven't paused to do your reflection, hit the pause button and reflect. Otherwise, come push pause, write down our contact information, reach out. We would love to hear from you and we'd love to hear your thoughts. All right, have a fantastic day and thank you so much for growing with us.